Immigration systems don't change quietly unless something beneath them already has. Here's what nobody tells you. When a country rewrites immigration rules at scale, it isn't responding to movement alone. It's responding to pressure, economic, political, and structural, that has already crossed a threshold. That is why the announcement that new U.S. immigration rules now affect 75 countries landed like a shockwave, even before most people understood the details. This is where the pattern begins. Throughout modern history, immigration policy has functioned as a release valve during expansion and a filter during stress. In the late 19th century, open migration fed industrial growth. In the 1920s, after war and recession, restrictions followed. After 2001, security reframed access. After 2008, labor demand quietly reshaped priorities again. Each shift looked technical, none were accidental. Here's why this matters now. Immigration is not just about borders. It's about labor supply, housing pressure, wage dynamics, fiscal balance, and political legitimacy. When rules change across dozens of countries at once, analysts suggest it signals a system-wide recalibration, not a policy tweak. The scale tells you the stress is broad, not localized. Let me show you exactly how these shocks propagate. When access tightens, labor pipelines constrict. Industries dependent on foreign workers, healthcare, agriculture, construction, logistics, technology, feel pressure almost immediately. Wages rise in some sectors, shortages deepen in others. Costs pass through to consumers. Inflation doesn't announce the cause, it just arrives. At first it looked like control, then the bill arrived. Sending countries feel it too. Remittances slow, skilled workers delay plans. Education pathways reroute. Families recalibrate futures built around mobility assumptions that no longer hold. Immigration policy is domestic on paper. In practice, it's global infrastructure. Everyone thought they were safe. They weren't. The danger wasn't the rule change itself. It was how many systems had quietly optimized around the old rules. Housing markets priced for population growth. Universities built pipelines. Employers assumed replenishment. When that assumption breaks, friction spreads fast. Here's the mechanism. Immigration policy compresses multiple pressures into a single lever. Tighten it, and you reduce labor supply while increasing bargaining power for those already inside. Loosen it, and you relieve shortages while amplifying political backlash. Governments oscillate between the two, often too late. The system rarely lands softly. Not borders, balance. That's the real issue. Analysts suggest the breadth of this change reflects an attempt to rebalance labor markets, social capacity, and political tolerance all at once. But rebalancing at scale always produces winners and losers, and the losers don't surface immediately. Here's the trap. Immigration shocks create delayed effects. The first year looks manageable. The second year reveals shortages. The third year forces automation, offshoring, or policy reversal. By the time consequences are clear, flexibility is gone. The danger wasn't the announcement, it was the timing. Because immigration restrictions tend to arrive precisely when economies need adaptability most, and the unresolved question isn't how many countries are affected, it's what happens when labor, capital, and policy all tighten at the same time. The consequences of immigration shocks are never immediate. They unfold in layers, quietly at first, then all at once. Here's what nobody tells you. Immigration policy doesn't just move people, it rearranges incentives across entire economies. When access narrows suddenly, pressure doesn't disappear, it relocates. This is where the mechanism becomes visible. Labor shortages don't always raise wages enough to solve themselves. In some sectors, higher pay attracts workers. In others, the work is too specialized, too seasonal, or too physically demanding to adjust quickly. Analysts suggest that when immigration tightens broadly, employers respond in predictable ways. Automation accelerates, offshoring expands, and productivity demands rise on a shrinking workforce. None of these changes are neutral. Let me show you exactly how this has played out before. During past periods of immigration restriction, economies initially celebrated control. Political pressure eased, headlines moved on. Then the bill arrived, crops went unharvested, construction slowed, healthcare staffing gaps widened. Businesses didn't collapse, but they adapted in ways that permanently changed labor markets. Once automation replaces labor, jobs don't come back when policy softens. At first, it looked manageable. Then the danger surfaced elsewhere. Housing shortages worsened as construction lagged. Service inflation persisted as staffing stayed tight. Growth slowed, not because demand vanished, but because capacity couldn't expand. This is the hidden cost of tightening during structural labor scarcity, not restriction, repricing. That's the real effect. Immigration policy doesn't eliminate labor demand. It raises the price of meeting it. Some workers benefit. Others are stretched thinner. Consumers absorb higher costs. Governments face trade-offs they didn't advertise. Here's the trap. Immigration restrictions often arrive alongside other tightening forces: higher interest rates, fiscal restraint, geopolitical uncertainty. Each policy makes sense in isolation. Together, they compress flexibility. Analysts argue that this convergence increases the risk of policy overshoot, where systems slow more than intended and recovery becomes harder to engineer. Sending countries aren't insulated either. Reduced mobility changes development paths. Skilled workers stay home longer or redirect elsewhere. Remittance flows soften. Education and migration corridors realign. Over time, global labor flows don't stop. They reroute. And rerouting changes alliances, trade patterns, and influence. Some scenarios suggest the new rules could stabilize domestic labor markets if paired with productivity gains and targeted reforms. Another scenario indicates prolonged shortages that force policy reversal under economic pressure. A third points toward accelerated automation and reshoring that permanently reduces migration demand. All remain possible. None are painless. Here's why this matters. Immigration policy is often framed as a social issue. In reality, it's a macroeconomic lever with long shadows. Once pulled, it reshapes systems far beyond the border, and those systems don't reset quickly. The danger wasn't tightening access. It was assuming the system could absorb it without changing character. Economies built on mobility behave differently when movement slows. Innovation, growth, and resilience adjust, sometimes in opposite directions. So the final question isn't whether these new rules are right or wrong. It's whether they arrive with a plan for the second and third order effects they will inevitably trigger. Because immigration shocks don't end with fewer arrivals. They end with a different economy than the one policymakers expected.